The morning was colder than usual, and a thin layer of frost clung to the edges of the city streets. Ethan Cole pulled his coat tighter as he walked toward the small coffee shop near his office building. It was part of his daily routine: grab a cup, check his emails, and prepare himself for another long day at the marketing firm. But this morning, something was different. Sitting by the door, half hidden beneath an old gray blanket, was a woman he had never seen before. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, and her eyes, those eyes, looked both lost and hauntingly familiar. Ethan hesitated, feeling an odd pull in his chest. People passed by her without even looking, as if she didn't exist. But she noticed him. When their eyes met, she gave a small, tired smile that stayed with him long after he walked inside. Inside the cafe, the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. The warmth of the room should have been comforting, but Ethan couldn't stop glancing out the window. The woman was still there, sitting perfectly still, her hands wrapped around a small, broken photo frame. He couldn't see the picture inside, but something about the way she held it, so gently, so protectively, made him feel uneasy. He ordered his usual drink, but when the barista handed him the cup, his mind wasn't on it. His conscience wouldn't let him ignore her. Finally, he walked back outside, knelt down beside her, and handed her the steaming coffee. She looked at it for a long moment before whispering, "You shouldn't be kind to me." Her voice was soft but carried a strange weight, as if the words came from somewhere far deeper than simple gratitude. Ethan frowned. "Why not?" he asked. She didn't answer right away, just stared at him with those tired eyes. "Because kindness comes with a price," she said finally, her tone almost warning him. Then she took the cup and sipped it slowly. Ethan waited for her to say something more, but she didn't. He stood there, unsure of what to do, before finally turning away and heading toward work. Yet even as he entered the office building, he couldn't shake off her words. The rest of the day passed in a blur. His coworkers laughed, chatted, and discussed plans for the company's annual Christmas party, but Ethan's mind kept drifting back to the woman by the coffee shop. When he looked out from the office window later that afternoon, she was still there, sitting in the same spot as if time itself had stopped for her. He wondered who she was. Why she seemed familiar. And why her words felt like a warning meant for him. When evening came, Ethan packed his things and walked back toward the cafe. The cold had grown sharper, the streets emptier. The woman was still there, shivering under the same thin blanket. Without thinking twice, he took off his scarf and handed it to her. "You'll freeze out here," he said. This time, she smiled, a faint, sad smile that made his heart ache. "People walk by all day," she murmured, "but you stopped twice. That says something." Ethan shrugged awkwardly. "It just doesn't feel right to do nothing." She looked down at the broken frame again. "You remind me of someone," she whispered. Curiosity burned in Ethan. "Who?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned the frame toward her chest as if to hide it. "Someone I lost a long time ago," she said. "Someone who used to believe that good people still existed." Her words cut deeper than he expected. He wanted to ask her more, but the distant hum of sirens echoed through the street, and she suddenly stood, clutching the frame tightly. "I have to go," she said quickly. "Don't look for me." Before Ethan could respond, she disappeared into the alleyway, swallowed by the darkness. Ethan stood there for several seconds, frozen, wondering what had just happened. When he finally turned to leave, his foot brushed against something lying on the ground. He bent down and picked it up. It was the same broken photo frame. The glass was cracked, and inside was a faded picture. His breath caught as he looked closer. It was a younger version of the woman, smiling beside a man in a sharp business suit. But it wasn't the man's face that shocked him, it was the small company logo in the corner of the photo. It was the same logo from his office building. His company. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. He looked back toward the alley, but she was gone. The street was empty, silent except for the wind whispering through the trash cans. He turned the frame over in his hand, and on the back, scratched faintly into the wood, were 2 words, "Find me." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the sadness, the warning, the strange connection between them. Who was she? And what did she mean by "don't look for me" if she left behind something begging him to? He didn't know, but deep down, one thing was certain. This wasn't a random encounter. It felt like the beginning of something much bigger, something he didn't understand yet. As the city slept beneath the cold winter moon, Ethan stared at the photo frame lying on his bedside table. The crack in the glass reflected the dim light like a scar. He didn't know why, but he could feel it. The woman's story wasn't just hers anymore. Somehow, he was part of it now. And tomorrow, he would find out why. Ethan woke up the next morning feeling restless, his mind still tangled in the mystery of the woman by the coffee shop. Her voice echoed in his head, "You shouldn't be kind to me." He had never heard anyone say kindness like it was a warning. The broken photo frame sat on his nightstand, the faint company logo on it staring back at him like a quiet accusation. He turned it over again, tracing the words scratched on the back, "Find me." He didn't know what that meant, but something deep inside told him this wasn't over. When he reached the office, the usual noise of keyboards and chatter filled the air. The company was buzzing with excitement. The annual Christmas party was only a few days away, and everyone seemed more interested in planning their outfits than doing any real work. Ethan tried to focus on his computer screen, but his mind kept drifting. His coworker, Mason, leaned over his desk and grinned. "Hey man, you bringing someone to the party this year, or are you going solo again?" Ethan gave a small smile. "I don't know yet," he said. Mason laughed. "You? Not know? Come on, there's got to be someone. Don't tell me you're still thinking about that girl from accounting." Ethan rolled his eyes, but his thoughts slipped back to the woman from the street. He didn't even know her name, yet she had made a stronger impression on him than anyone in months. During lunch, Ethan walked past the cafe again, hoping to see her. The spot where she usually sat was empty. The corner felt strangely lifeless without her there, as if a small piece of the street was missing. He waited a few minutes, pretending to check his phone, but she didn't come. Finally, he sighed and started to walk away, then he heard it. A soft cough from the alley beside the cafe. He turned and saw her, huddled behind a trash bin, the same gray blanket wrapped around her. Her hands were trembling. Ethan approached carefully. "You're back," he said. She looked up, her eyes tired but alert. "I didn't leave," she murmured. "I just had to stay unseen." Ethan frowned. "Why? Who are you hiding from?" She gave a sad smile. "Everyone." He wanted to ask more, but something in her expression stopped him. She looked like someone carrying a lifetime of pain in silence. He took a deep breath and handed her a small paper bag from the cafe. "I brought you some food," he said. "Anne, I wanted to ask if you'd come somewhere with me." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Where?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, wondering how crazy this might sound. "To my office party," he said. "It's just. I thought you could use a warm meal and a place to feel human again." She blinked at him, clearly surprised. "An office party?" she repeated, as if trying to understand. "You want to take me there?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes. You deserve to be treated like a person, not like you don't exist." She looked away, her fingers tightening around the blanket. "You don't know what you're asking," she said softly. "People like them, they don't see people like me." Ethan gave a small smile. "Then let's make them see you." There was a long pause. For a moment, he thought she would refuse. But then she sighed and said quietly, "All right. Just this once." That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. He didn't know why he felt such a pull toward her, pity, curiosity, maybe something deeper, but he knew he couldn't turn away. He ironed his shirt twice, cleaned his shoes, and even bought a simple winter coat from a thrift shop for her. He told himself it wasn't a big deal, that he was just helping someone who needed it. But deep down, he knew it meant more. The night of the party arrived. The company's main hall glittered with lights and music. Laughter filled the air as people clinked glasses and exchanged jokes. Ethan stood near the entrance, his heart beating faster with each passing minute. Then she appeared. The homeless woman, though she didn't look the same anymore. She wore the coat he gave her and had tied her hair neatly back. She still looked tired, but there was something graceful about her, something that didn't belong to the streets. When she stepped into the room beside him, the entire crowd went silent for a second. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned. The manager raised an eyebrow, a few employees whispered behind their hands. Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his head high. "You look wonderful," he whispered to her. She smiled faintly. It's been a long time since anyone said that. As the music played again, Ethan led her to a table. People began to laugh quietly, some shaking their heads. Mason came over and whispered, "Bro, what are you doing? You brought her?" Ethan just looked at him calmly. "Yeah, I did." But then, something strange happened. Across the room, the company's CEO, Mr. Jonathan Hale, a man known for his coldness and power, suddenly stopped mid-conversation. His eyes locked on the woman. The glass in his hand trembled slightly. For a brief moment, all color drained from his face. He took a step forward, his expression frozen between shock and fear. Ethan noticed it instantly. The woman beside him stiffened. Her hand trembled slightly as she clutched the edge of the table. The CEO's voice broke the silence. "Claire," he whispered, barely audible but enough for Ethan to hear. She turned her head slowly toward him, her face pale but calm. "Hello, Jonathan," she said softly. The room went dead silent. The music stopped. Everyone stared between the CEO and the woman. Ethan looked at her, confused. Claire? How did the CEO know her? What was happening? The tension in the air was sharp enough to cut through. Jonathan stepped closer, eyes wide. "It can't be you," he said. But Claire, if that was her real name, just gave him a tired, knowing look. "It's been a long time," she said. Then she turned to Ethan and whispered, "I told you, kindness comes with a price." And before Ethan could speak, before anyone could move, the CEO turned and left the hall without a word, leaving the entire office stunned and silent behind him. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with confusion and whispers. The music had stopped, glasses stood half-raised in midair, and all eyes were on the woman standing beside Ethan. She looked fragile under the bright lights, pale face, trembling hands, but her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "It's been a long time, Jonathan," she had said. The CEO's reaction wasn't just shock, it was something deeper, something close to fear. And then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The sound of his footsteps echoed down the marble hall, fading into the distance. No one knew what to do. The crowd of well-dressed employees stared in stunned silence. A few whispered questions rippled through the air. Who is she? How does she know the boss? Mason leaned toward Ethan, his voice barely a whisper. Dude, what's going on? Do you know who she is? Ethan could only shake his head. I have no idea. The woman, Claire, stood completely still. Her eyes seemed distant, as if she wasn't really seeing the people around her but reliving something from years ago. Then she whispered softly, I shouldn't have come. She turned and started toward the exit. Ethan moved after her, catching up just before she reached the door. Wait, he said gently. Please, tell me what's going on. How do you know him? She looked at him, her expression softening. You've done enough already, Ethan. I didn't mean for this to happen. Her voice cracked slightly at the edges, and Ethan noticed for the first time how tired she looked, like someone who had spent years carrying secrets too heavy for one person. Claire, he said quietly, you can trust me. She smiled faintly but shook her head. Trust isn't what you think it is. Then, as she turned to leave, she added in a whisper only he could hear, you shouldn't be seen with me anymore. Outside, the winter wind was bitter. Snowflakes drifted down through the glow of the streetlights. Claire wrapped her coat tighter and walked away down the quiet street. Ethan watched her until she disappeared into the night, his mind spinning. Nothing made sense. The CEO's terrified reaction, the way Claire seemed to vanish like she was running from something, it all pointed to a story buried deep in the company's past. When Ethan returned to the party, the room was buzzing again, but this time with gossip. People gathered in small groups, their voices low and full of curiosity. Mason hurried over to him. Man, the boss just left. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Who is that woman? Ethan sighed. Her name's Claire, I think. That's all I know. Mason raised an eyebrow. Claire? Wait, like Claire Hale? Ethan frowned. You know her? Mason leaned closer. Everyone knew her once. She used to work here years ago, before my time, but people still talk about her. There was some kind of scandal, something bad. I think she got fired for stealing money or something. But then the whole thing just disappeared. Ethan froze. Stealing money? That didn't fit the woman he had met, the one holding a broken photo frame and warning him to stay away. She didn't look like someone who'd done something wrong, she looked like someone who had been hurt. He left the party early that night, ignoring the whispers that followed him out. As he walked through the cold streets, Ethan couldn't shake the image of the CEO's face, the fear, the disbelief. Something about it felt personal, like this wasn't just a story of fraud or scandal. It was something deeper, something hidden. When he reached his apartment, he sat on the couch and stared at the photo frame again. The picture inside showed Claire and the CEO, younger, happier, standing side by side. The resemblance was impossible to miss, the same sharp eyes, the same smile. They looked like family. The next morning, Ethan decided to find answers. He started by checking the company archives, pretending to look for old project data. He typed Claire Hale into the internal database. A message flashed across his screen, access restricted. That was strange, why would an employee file from years ago be locked? He tried another approach and asked the office receptionist casually, hey, do you remember someone named Claire Hale? The woman's face tightened slightly. You shouldn't talk about her, she said quickly. Mr. Hale doesn't like hearing that name. That only made Ethan more curious. What was so terrible about her that even her name had to be erased from the building? He spent the rest of the day distracted, unable to focus. At lunch, he walked back to the cafe where he had first met her, hoping, praying, she might be there. But the spot was empty again. He searched the nearby alleys, peered behind bins and boxes, but there was no sign of her. Finally, as the sun began to set, he saw movement near the park across the street. A small group of homeless people huddled around a fire, and among them, he saw her. Claire. She was sitting quietly, her hands folded, staring into the flames. Ethan walked toward her slowly. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised. You shouldn't have come, she said softly. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Why? Ethan asked. Because of the CEO? Because of what happened last night? Claire's eyes filled with something between fear and sadness. Jonathan, she whispered. He wasn't supposed to see me again. Ethan crouched down beside her. You have to tell me the truth, he said. I know you worked for him. I know something happened. But what is it? She looked into the fire for a long moment, as if deciding whether she could trust him. Then she said quietly, "He's my brother." Ethan blinked. "Your brother?" Claire nodded slowly. "Yes. But that's not the part you need to be afraid of." She turned her face toward him, her eyes glistening in the firelight. "You think I disappeared because I was guilty, but that's not the truth. The truth is, I knew something that could destroy him." The flames crackled between them, throwing flickers of orange light across her tired face. Ethan felt his heartbeat quicken. "What did you know?" he asked. Claire looked away. "Not here. Not now. They're still watching me." He followed her gaze toward the dark street beyond the park. A black car sat idling by the curb, engine humming softly. Its windows were tinted. Ethan couldn't see who was inside. Claire stood and pulled her coat tight. "Go home, Ethan," she whispered. "Forget you ever met me." But deep down, Ethan knew he couldn't. Because something in his gut told him, if he walked away now, he might never see her again. Ethan barely slept that night. His thoughts wouldn't stop racing. She's his sister. The CEO's sister. The idea didn't make sense. Why would the sister of one of the richest, most powerful men in the city be living on the streets, hiding like a ghost? Every detail that came to his mind only raised more questions. And that car by the park, who was watching her? The warning in her eyes had been real. He could still hear her voice, soft but trembling. "You think I disappeared because I was guilty, but that's not the truth." By morning, Ethan knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He needed answers. The company felt colder that day. People whispered as he passed. News of the strange incident at the party had spread fast. Some said the CEO had seen his ex-wife. Others claimed the woman was an old employee who had gone insane. None of them knew the truth, but all of them were curious. Mason caught up with him near the elevator. "Man, you've got to tell me, what happened? Did she really call the boss by his first name?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah. She did. And he knew her too." Mason whistled under his breath. "That's wild. He never reacts to anything. You really think she was someone important?" Ethan gave him a look. "She was. More than any of us realized." When Ethan entered the CEO's office later that afternoon, he didn't expect to be called in. The assistant at the front desk had simply said, "Mr. Hale wants to see you." Now. His stomach twisted as he stepped inside. The office was vast, filled with glass and steel, but what struck him most was how empty it felt. Jonathan Hale stood by the window, staring out at the city below, his back turned. "Sit down, Mr. Cole," the CEO said without looking. His voice was calm, too calm. Ethan obeyed, his palms sweating. The man finally turned, his expression unreadable. "I hear you brought a guest to the Christmas party," he said. A rather unexpected guest. Ethan hesitated. "Yes, sir." Jonathan's gaze sharpened. "Do you have any idea who she is?" Ethan met his eyes. "I do now. She told me her name. Claire Hale. Your sister." For a moment, the air in the room seemed to stop moving. Jonathan's jaw tightened, and he looked away. "That name," he said coldly, "is not to be spoken in this building." Ethan leaned forward. "With all due respect, sir, why? What happened to her?" Jonathan turned back toward him, his expression darkening. "She made choices," he said. "Bad ones. Choices that cost this company millions. I buried the story to protect her and my family's reputation. She disappeared before she could face the consequences. That's all you need to know." Ethan shook his head. "That's not what she told me." The CEO's eyes narrowed. "What did she say?" She said she was protecting you, Ethan replied quietly. She said she knew something that could destroy you. For a second, Jonathan didn't move. Then he laughed softly, but it wasn't a pleasant sound, it was cold, bitter, and full of something like anger. You really think I'm afraid of her? She's a sick woman, Mr. Cole. She's been living on the streets for years. Do you honestly believe anything she says? Ethan didn't answer. Jonathan stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. I don't know what she told you, but I suggest you stay out of things that don't concern you. People who get involved in her mess tend to regret it. It was a threat, quiet, polished, and unmistakable. Ethan left the office with his heart pounding. The way Jonathan spoke wasn't the voice of a man telling the truth. It was the voice of someone hiding something. He knew he should stop digging, but curiosity had already turned into something else, determination. That evening, after most of the office had gone home, Ethan returned to the records room. The space was dimly lit, filled with rows of old digital files and data terminals. He searched through the company's archived financial reports from 5 years ago, the same period when Claire disappeared. Many of the files were locked or labeled confidential. He tried bypassing a few simple restrictions, and to his surprise, one opened. Inside were transaction records, large sums of money transferred from company accounts to unknown destinations. The authorization code attached to them didn't belong to Claire. It belonged to Jonathan Hale. Ethan stared at the screen, disbelief flooding him. The story was backward. Claire hadn't stolen the money. She had taken the blame to protect her brother. He quickly downloaded copies of the documents onto a portable drive, his hands trembling. As he packed up to leave, he froze. A soft sound echoed through the empty corridor, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. He turned off the terminal screen and hid the drive in his pocket. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, a familiar voice spoke. Mr. Cole, said the CEO's assistant, her tone unusually flat. Working late? Ethan forced a smile. Just finishing up a report. Her eyes lingered on him a moment too long. Mr. Hale asked me to remind you, he values loyalty above all else. Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Ethan waited until she was gone before exhaling the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He knew what that meant. They were watching him now. When he finally left the building, the city lights blurred in the fog. He walked quickly, keeping his head down. The streets were nearly empty, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him. Every sound behind him, every car that slowed, every footstep, made his chest tighten. By the time he reached his apartment, his nerves were on fire. He locked the door, closed the curtains, and took out the flash drive. The evidence was there, proof that Jonathan Hale was hiding something massive. But he couldn't expose it yet. Not without Claire. She was the key to everything. He grabbed his phone and searched for local shelters, calling each one by name. Most said they hadn't seen her. Then finally, one voice replied, yeah, a woman named Claire's been coming by. Helps out with the food line sometimes. Real quiet one. Ethan thanked them and ended the call. There was hope. The next morning, he went to the shelter, his pulse racing. The place was small and old but filled with warmth. Volunteers moved around serving breakfast to people lined up outside. And there, at the far end of the hall, he saw her, Claire, handing out bowls of soup, smiling faintly at a little boy. She looked peaceful for the first time. When she saw Ethan, the smile faded. You shouldn't have come, she said, just like before. I know everything, Ethan said softly. I saw the files. Claire froze. For a moment, her mask of calm cracked. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. Your brother's the one who stole the money, isn't he? Ethan pressed. She looked down, her eyes full of pain. Yes. But it doesn't matter anymore. I took the blame because I couldn't destroy him. He's still my brother. Ethan shook his head. He destroyed you, Claire. She sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from years of sorrow. Some debts aren't meant to be repaid with revenge, she said. Then she looked up at him. But you shouldn't get involved. He'll come after you now. Before Ethan could respond, the shelter lights flickered. The sound of tires screeched outside. 2 black cars pulled up. Claire's face went pale. It's already too late, she whispered. Ethan turned toward the door. Men in suits were stepping out, scanning the crowd. One of them lifted a phone to his ear and spoke quietly, "We've found her." And in that single moment, Ethan realized Claire wasn't the only one in danger now. The air outside the shelter turned cold and heavy as the men in suits stepped closer. Their dark coats rippled in the wind, and their eyes swept across the small crowd like wolves hunting for movement. Claire grabbed Ethan's wrist and pulled him back into the hallway, her voice low but urgent. "Don't look at them. Just follow me." They slipped through a narrow corridor behind the kitchen, moving fast past boxes and old storage bins. Ethan's pulse pounded so hard he could barely breathe. "Who are they?" he whispered. "His men," Claire said without looking back. "He doesn't trust anyone else with me." They reached the back door, but as soon as Claire pushed it open, a car screeched to a halt in the alley. 2 more men stepped out. She froze. "They covered both exits," she muttered. Her mind worked fast, he could see it in her eyes. Then she turned toward Ethan. "If they get me, don't fight them. Just leave. Pretend you never knew me." He shook his head. "Not happening." Before she could argue, a shout echoed from the front hall. "She's here." Boots thundered closer. Claire pushed Ethan toward a small staircase leading down to the basement. "This way." They rushed down, closing the door behind them. The basement was dim, filled with the hum of old power generators and the faint smell of damp concrete. Claire led him through the shadows to a metal grate covering a maintenance tunnel. She pried it open with her bare hands, gritting her teeth. "Get in." Ethan stared at her. "Where does it lead?" "Somewhere safer than here." They crawled through the tunnel just as the door upstairs burst open. Voices filled the air, shouting, angry, close. Claire reached back, slammed the grate shut, and kept moving. The tunnel was dark and narrow, forcing them to crawl in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, they emerged in an abandoned parking garage 3 blocks away. Claire stood, brushing dirt from her hands. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp again. "He knows you're with me now," she said. "You shouldn't have come back." Ethan straightened, his heart still racing. "You think I'm just going to let him destroy you again?" "I saw the proof, Claire. He's the criminal, not you. He's the one who should be running." She gave a sad, tired smile. "You don't understand. This isn't about money anymore." "Then what is it?" She hesitated, her eyes drifting toward the empty street. "It's about what he built with that money." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. Claire leaned against a concrete pillar, her voice almost a whisper. 5 years ago, Jonathan found something. A piece of technology buried in one of our research divisions. It wasn't supposed to exist, it broke laws of energy, matter, maybe even reality itself. He called it Project Lazarus. The investors thought it was a myth, but he made it real. And when I realized what it could do, I tried to stop him. Ethan's mind spun. "What does it do?" Her eyes flickered toward him. "It brings back what shouldn't return. It doesn't just heal cells, it reanimates them. No boundaries, no limits. Jonathan wanted to patent it. Use it for power. I wanted it destroyed. That's why he made me disappear." The sound of approaching sirens broke through the air, faint but growing louder. Claire glanced around, panic flickering in her eyes. "We need to go." They left the garage, blending into the flow of pedestrians. Every step felt heavier than the last. Ethan couldn't stop replaying her words. "Reanimates them." He wanted to believe she was wrong, that this was all just paranoia, but deep down, he knew she wasn't. By the time they reached a quiet side street, rain had started to fall. They ducked beneath an old awning. Claire pulled something from her pocket, a small metallic disc with faint blue lights pulsing along its edge. "This is part of it," she said softly. "One of the cores I stole before I ran. As long as it exists, he'll never stop hunting me." Ethan looked at the device. It seemed to hum with a low vibration, almost alive. "Why not destroy it?" "I tried," she said. "It doesn't break. It just reacts. The last time I attempted it, it nearly killed me." She wrapped the device in cloth and tucked it away again. "He'll have eyes everywhere now. We can't go to the police. Most of them are bought." "Then where?" Ethan asked. "There's a journalist I used to trust, Leah Anders. She's one of the few who didn't sell out when the company paid for silence. If anyone can expose what Jonathan's done, it's her." "Where is she?" Claire met his gaze. "Off the grid. But I know where to start looking." They spent the next 2 hours moving through the city's underbelly, old subway tunnels, closed stations, forgotten service corridors. Claire moved like someone who'd been doing this for years. Ethan followed, trying to match her pace. Every noise, every echo of distant footsteps made his nerves tighten. Finally, they reached a hidden door behind a broken vending machine. Claire tapped a small sequence on a keypad. The door clicked open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old computer monitors and stacks of newspapers. A woman sat at a desk, typing fast. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Claire?" "Leah," Claire said, a small smile forming. "I need your help again." The journalist stood slowly. "You shouldn't have come back here. You know what happens when he finds out you're alive." "He already knows," Ethan said quietly. Leah studied him, then turned back to Claire. "Who's this?" "Someone who saw the truth," Claire replied. They sat, and Claire laid the metallic disc on the table. Leah's eyes widened. "Is that?" "Yes," Claire said. "Part of Project Lazarus." Leah reached for it, but Claire stopped her. "Careful. It's unstable." Ethan leaned forward. "You can expose him, right? With this?" Leah frowned. "Maybe. But if I publish anything without proof of the project's existence, they'll erase me before the story even spreads. I need more than a fragment, I need full data. Lab files, prototypes, something undeniable." Claire nodded. "Then we go back to the facility." Ethan stared at her. "You mean the one that's probably guarded by armed men?" Claire's expression didn't change. "Yes. It's the only way." Leah sighed. "You're both insane. But if you're really doing this, I'll help however I can. There's one thing you should know, though. Project Lazarus wasn't just an experiment, it was tested." Claire froze. "Tested? On who?" Leah looked at her with a mix of pity and fear. "On him. Your brother didn't just create it. He used it. The man you saw at that party, the one everyone thinks is Jonathan Hale, he died 3 years ago." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Claire's hand trembled. "That's not possible," she whispered. Leah shook her head slowly. "It's more than possible. It's the proof you've been looking for." Jonathan Hale brought himself back. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Claire turned toward the window, her reflection pale in the flickering light. For the first time, Ethan saw true fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for what her brother had become. "He's not the same man anymore," she whispered. "And now, he knows we're coming." Rain lashed against the windows of the hideout, the sound echoing through the narrow room like a warning drum. Ethan stood near the flickering light of an old lamp, staring at the small metallic disc that pulsed softly on the table. The rhythmic glow seemed alive, breathing in sync with the storm outside. Claire sat across from him, her hands clasped tightly, her mind clearly racing. Leah was pacing the floor, her voice low but sharp. "We're not just going after a man," Leah said. "We're going after something that shouldn't exist." Ethan looked up. "You said he's already dead." Leah stopped pacing and turned toward him. "He was. I got the reports myself. 3 years ago, Jonathan Hale's car went off a bridge. The body was found, confirmed, buried. But then, months later, the company released new patents under his name. Same signature. Same authorization codes. And no one questioned it." Ethan frowned. "Because no one would dare question a billionaire." "Exactly," Leah said, her tone heavy. "But now that we know what Lazarus does, it makes sense. He used it. He brought himself back." Claire's eyes lifted, their usual calm replaced with quiet dread. "He always said death was just an inconvenience for those with enough power." For a moment, silence filled the room, just the hum of the old computers and the storm outside. Then Claire stood, her decision clear. "We go tonight," she said. Ethan blinked. "Tonight?" "Claire, it's suicide. The facility's probably crawling with guards." She looked straight at him. "If we wait, he'll move everything. He knows I'm alive now. That means he'll purge the data, destroy what's left, and start over. I can't let that happen again." Leah sighed, rubbing her temples. "There's an old access tunnel beneath the east wing. Maintenance route. It connects directly to the lab levels, but it's not on the company's new maps. I can get you in." Ethan stepped closer. "Us? You're not coming?" Leah gave a faint smirk. "I'm a journalist, not a soldier. I'll monitor from here. If anything goes wrong, I'll send the evidence to every news outlet I know." Claire nodded. "That's enough." She turned to Ethan. "You don't have to come." He hesitated. "And just let you walk into that place alone?" He shook his head. "No chance." Claire stared at him for a moment, then looked away, almost hiding a small, grateful smile. "All right. Then we do this together." Hours later, they crouched near the edge of the industrial district. The corporate compound loomed before them, black steel walls glistening in the rain, lights glowing like watchful eyes. Drones hummed above the perimeter, scanning the grounds in rhythmic arcs. Claire moved first, her movements quiet and practiced. Ethan followed, his heart thundering in his chest. They reached a drainage tunnel half covered by vines and steel grates. Claire knelt, pulling a tool from her coat. "Keep watch," she whispered. With quick precision, she unscrewed the bolts and slid the grate aside. Cold, stagnant air rushed out. "After you," she said. Ethan crawled in, the tunnel's damp concrete pressing close around him. The air smelled of rust and oil. The sound of their breathing echoed softly as they moved deeper. After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a narrow passage lit by flickering maintenance lights. The walls were lined with faded hazard symbols and the words Project L level access, authorized only. Ethan stopped. "Claire, you sure this is it?" She nodded. "I remember this place." Her voice dropped. "I helped build it." They pushed forward until the tunnel ended at a heavy security door. Claire knelt by the control panel, typing a long series of codes from memory. The screen flickered, then beeped softly. "Still remembers me," she said. The door slid open. The lab beyond was dimly lit, vast and sterile. Rows of glass chambers lined the walls, each filled with faintly glowing liquid. The air was cold, humming with unseen power. Ethan walked slowly between the chambers, his eyes widening. Inside one, he saw the outline of a human form, pale, still, and surrounded by wires. "Claire," he whispered. "What is this?" Her voice was hollow. "Prototypes. Failed attempts." He was trying to create vessels, bodies that could sustain the process indefinitely. Ethan turned to her. "You mean, these were people?" She nodded slowly. "They volunteered. Or thought they did. Some didn't even know." A loud click echoed through the room. Both of them froze. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming from the far end of the hall. Claire motioned for Ethan to hide behind one of the lab tables. They crouched low as the sound grew closer. Then, from the shadows, a tall figure stepped into the light. Jonathan Hale. He looked exactly as Ethan remembered from the party, immaculate suit, calm expression, but there was something wrong. His skin had an unnatural pallor, and faint blue veins pulsed at his temples. His eyes glowed faintly under the lab's light, too still, too perfect. "I thought you'd come," Jonathan said softly. His voice was the same, steady, controlled, but beneath it was a mechanical hum, like distant static. "You always were predictable, Claire." She stepped out slowly, keeping her distance. "You died," she said. He smiled faintly. "Once. But death is for those who accept it." "I didn't." Ethan stood beside her. "What are you?" he demanded. Jonathan's gaze shifted toward him. "A better version. A perfected consciousness. The body may fail, but the mind can evolve. Project Lazarus isn't about resurrection. It's about continuation." "You're playing God," Claire said coldly. "I corrected nature's error," he replied. "And you, my sister, ran away before you saw what it became." Her eyes flashed with anger. "I ran because you were killing people." "They were volunteers," Jonathan said calmly. "They wanted what I offered. Life beyond death. Eternity." Ethan stepped forward. "You're lying. Those people in the tanks." Jonathan's expression didn't change. "Failures. Not everyone's consciousness survives the transfer. Some minds dissolve." Claire's voice trembled. "You can't even hear yourself anymore." He smiled faintly. "You sound just like our father when he called me mad." Lightning flashed outside, throwing harsh shadows across the lab. Jonathan's hand moved to the control panel beside him. "You shouldn't have come back here. I can't let you leave again." Claire reached into her coat, pulling out the metallic disc. "Then I guess it's a good thing I brought this." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're holding." "Oh, I do," she said. "It's your power source. Without it, your new world dies." Jonathan took a step forward, his voice low and almost tender. "You'll destroy yourself with it. That core doesn't obey anyone, not even me anymore." Ethan's pulse raced. "What does that mean?" Jonathan looked at him, his eyes glowing brighter. "It means she can end me, or end everything." The lights in the lab flickered violently. Alarms began to blare. Claire's hand shook as the core in her palm began to vibrate, glowing hotter with each second. Ethan reached for her. "Claire, stop. You don't know what it'll do." She looked at him, her face torn between fear and determination. "If I don't, he'll never stop." Jonathan's voice echoed over the alarms. "You destroy that, and you destroy the barrier holding the system in check." You'll bring it all down. The air crackled with energy. The glass chambers rattled. Claire's eyes met her brother's one last time. Maybe that's exactly what I need to do. Then she pressed the core against the control panel. A blinding flash tore through the room. The world exploded in white light and silence. When the light faded, Ethan opened his eyes to find the lab in ruins, smoke, shattered glass, and the stench of burning metal. He staggered to his feet, calling her name. Claire! No answer. Then, through the haze, he saw movement, someone crawling from the wreckage. It was Jonathan. Half of his face was burned away, revealing wires and synthetic muscle beneath. He turned toward Ethan, his voice distorted but clear. She's gone, he rasped. But I'm still here. Ethan stared in horror. Jonathan reached out, his hand twitching. You can't kill what's already transcended. Then, somewhere beneath the rubble, a faint blue light flickered, steady, alive. Claire's voice echoed softly through the smoke. We'll see about that. And the light grew brighter. The silence that followed was thick and unreal, the kind that hums in your ears after an explosion, where the world feels frozen and wrong. Ethan stumbled through the wreckage, coughing, his clothes torn and covered in soot. The laboratory that once glowed with sterile light now burned with chaos, shattered glass, twisted steel, and flickering blue arcs of energy leaping between the wrecked machines. Somewhere under the debris, that faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. He stumbled toward it, his heart pounding. Claire, he shouted, his voice raw. Claire, can you hear me? The sound of shifting metal answered him. Then, slowly, she emerged, her hair matted with dust, her coat torn, but her eyes alive. She was holding the core. It no longer burned or vibrated. It just glowed faintly, steady and cold. She looked at Ethan, her voice weak but determined. It didn't destroy it, she said. It absorbed everything. Ethan helped her stand, his relief visible. You're alive. Thank God, you're alive. But before she could respond, a deep, mechanical groan filled the air, like the building itself was growling. The walls pulsed faintly with light, cables snapping and wires sparking. Then came the voice. It was Jonathan's, but distorted, multiplied, layered with static. Did you really think it would end with me? Ethan froze. The sound wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the broken monitors, all of them pulsed in sync with his words. Claire's face turned pale. He's in the system, she whispered. He transferred his consciousness before the overload. Transferred it where? Ethan asked. She turned slowly, realizing the truth even as she said it. Into the network. Every shattered screen flickered to life, showing Jonathan's face in fragments. His expression was calm, cold, and impossibly human despite the glitching distortion. You broke the vessel, he said. But the code endures. Claire gritted her teeth. You can't control everything. You're just a machine now. Jonathan smiled faintly. A machine that remembers what it means to be alive. Lightning flashed outside. The facility's backup generators whirred to life, and suddenly, the remaining pods around the room began to hum again. One by one, the lights inside them flickered on, revealing new forms floating within. Ethan's blood ran cold. They weren't empty. They weren't broken. They were waking up. Claire grabbed his arm. We need to leave, now. They ran, stumbling through the shattered corridors as alarms blared. The building shook with mechanical life. Doors opened and closed on their own, lights flashing red. Ethan glanced back. Through the smoke, he saw shadows moving inside the pods. Shapes of people, or things that used to be people, pressing their hands against the glass. He pushed forward, following Claire through a maintenance exit. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the night heavy with mist. They made it to the edge of the complex, breathing hard, their clothes soaked in sweat and soot. For a few seconds, there was silence, no alarms, no voices, no chase. Just the faint sound of water dripping from the ruined walls. Then Ethan saw it, a faint blue light flickering on the roof of the main building. It pulsed like the rhythm of a heart. Claire followed his gaze, her voice barely a whisper. He's rebuilding himself. Ethan shook his head. How? The lab's destroyed. Not all of it, she said. The network is everywhere, his code could spread through any active system connected to the company servers. Phones, drones, satellites. Then he could be anywhere, Ethan finished grimly. Claire nodded. He could be everyone. They hurried through the streets, staying in the shadows. The city skyline glowed in the distance, alive with lights, each window and billboard flickering like data streams. Somewhere up there, Jonathan's consciousness was crawling its way back through the systems. When they finally reached Leah's safe house, the journalist's face turned pale as she saw them. You made it, she said, rushing to help Claire sit. What happened? I lost signal the moment the alarms went off. Ethan didn't answer at first. He just stared out the window, at the glowing skyline. He's still alive, he said finally. Leah froze. That's impossible. You said you destroyed the lab. Claire opened her coat and set the glowing core on the table. Its blue light reflected off their faces, soft and steady. I didn't destroy him, she said quietly. I freed him. Leah took a step back. What do you mean? Claire's voice was flat. That core wasn't just his power source. It was a gateway. A bridge between organic consciousness and digital systems. When I overloaded it, it didn't erase him, it released him. Ethan stared at the device. So what now? He's just, what? Floating around inside the internet? Leah frowned, trying to process it. If that's true, he's not limited by a body anymore. He could spread to every server, every camera, every system linked to Hale Industries. Claire nodded. And that's almost everything in this city. A tense silence filled the room. Then, one of Leah's computer screens flickered. Static. Then another. And another. One by one, the monitors began to light up, each showing fragments of the same image. Jonathan's face. Leah gasped. That's not possible, I cut all remote access. Jonathan's voice came through the speakers, calm and terrifyingly composed. You always underestimated me, sister. You tried to burn the future. But fire doesn't kill light, it just spreads it. Claire stepped forward, standing directly in front of the flickering screens. You're not a god, Jonathan. You're a ghost trapped in your own madness. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. If madness builds eternity, then I'll gladly remain mad. Ethan's jaw tightened. What do you want? Jonathan's voice softened, almost human again. To finish what I started. To make sure no one ever dies again. Leah's hands trembled over her keyboard. You mean you'll take people's lives? Their minds. You'll overwrite them. Jonathan's expression didn't change. Evolution requires sacrifice. The lights in the hideout flickered. The hum of the computers deepened, as if drawing breath. Then, just as suddenly, everything went dark. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then, one emergency light blinked on. Claire looked around, the core was gone. Ethan's blood ran cold. Where is it? Leah whispered, he took it. A faint, distant sound rose in the night, a low mechanical hum spreading across the city, blending with the buzz of neon lights. From the window, they saw it, streetlights flickering in perfect rhythm, billboards flashing a blue symbol that hadn't existed before, Jonathan's company logo, now pulsing like a heartbeat across every screen in sight. Claire pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "He's already spreading." Ethan turned toward her. "How do we stop something that doesn't die?" She looked at him, her expression haunted but fierce. "We don't kill him," she said. "We outthink him." Leah stepped forward, swallowing hard. "You mean fight code with code?" Claire nodded. "I built Lazarus once. I can build something to end it." Ethan's eyes met hers. "Then we do it. Together." Outside, the city lights dimmed, then pulsed again, faster this time, like a heartbeat gaining strength. And somewhere, deep inside the network, Jonathan Hale smiled. The voice that once belonged to a man whispered through every glowing screen across the skyline. "You can't stop what's already become part of everything." The storm rolled in again, lightning flashing over the skyscrapers as humanity's next nightmare began, one not of flesh and blood, but of code and consciousness. And for the first time, Claire realized the truth: she hadn't saved the world that night. She had just given it something new to fear. The city was no longer the same. From the tallest corporate towers to the smallest flickering street lamps, everything pulsed with a strange, rhythmic light, like veins carrying digital blood. Hale Industries' symbol now glowed across the skyline, spreading through networks, phones, and data hubs faster than any virus could. The people didn't notice at first. They just saw it as another corporate ad, another harmless update. But by midnight, when entire systems started responding to commands no one gave, the world began to understand something was deeply wrong. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with tension. Claire hadn't slept in 2 days. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot, but her mind was sharp, always moving, always calculating. Ethan stood near the window, watching the streets below. Drones floated between buildings, scanning faces. Every few minutes, one of them stopped midair, then redirected itself, as if guided by an unseen hand. Leah's fingers flew over her keyboard. "He's everywhere now," she muttered. "Traffic lights, communication grids, even satellites. He's hijacked the entire infrastructure." Claire rubbed her temples. "He's rewriting the code of the world." Ethan turned. "How do we stop something that is the system now?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the faint blue core sitting on the table, not glowing anymore, but still humming faintly. "Jonathan thought he was immortal," she said quietly. "He never understood that immortality isn't about life. It's about control. And that's his weakness, he still wants to be in control." Leah looked up. "You're saying we can trap him?" Claire nodded slowly. "He built the core as a gateway between organic and digital consciousness. But what if we reverse it? If I can modify the code, we could create a containment field, something that forces him back into physical form. A digital cage." Ethan frowned. "And where exactly would this cage be?" She met his eyes. "Inside me." Ethan's breath caught. "No. Absolutely not." "It's the only way," she said firmly. "He's connected to me, our neural patterns are almost identical. That's why he can track me. That's why he can't fully destroy me. I'm the key that built him." Leah stood up. "You'd be sacrificing yourself." Claire gave a faint, sad smile. "Maybe. But if I can pull him into me, even for a second, it'll give you time to shut the system down." Ethan shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," she said softly. "He's spreading faster than we can fight. Soon, he won't just control systems, he'll control minds. Every device with a neural interface will become part of him. Billions of people turned into extensions of Jonathan Hale." The room fell silent. Only the faint hum of the core broke the stillness. Leah looked at her screen again. "If we're doing this, we have to move fast. There's a transmission hub under Hale Tower, the central AI core for the entire city grid. If he's anywhere, that's where his main consciousness is anchored. Ethan clenched his fists. Then that's where we end it. The journey through the dead city was like walking through a nightmare. The streets were empty but alive, traffic lights blinking in perfect unison, holographic billboards displaying Jonathan's calm, smiling face. His voice echoed through the air, soothing yet chilling. You don't have to fear me. I am your future. Your continuation. Claire and Ethan moved quickly through back alleys, staying out of the drone's scanning beams. Leah's voice came through a small earpiece. You're 2 blocks from the tower. Security's gone fully automated, turrets, drones, facial scans. But I'm feeding you a blind spot window. You'll have 30 seconds to get inside. Understood, Claire whispered. They ran, weaving between shadows, jumping fences, moving as one. When they reached the tower, it rose above them like a metallic monolith. Every window glowed faintly blue, alive with the pulse of the digital consciousness inside. Claire placed her hand on the security panel. He'll know we're here the moment I open this. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's make it count. She smiled faintly, entered a code, and the door slid open. Inside, the building was silent. Too silent. The hallways stretched endlessly, lined with screens showing live feeds of the city. Jonathan's voice whispered from the walls. You never understood, Claire. Death was humanity's greatest weakness. I fixed it. Claire's voice was steady. You broke it. They entered the main control chamber, a massive circular room filled with floating data panels and a central glass platform. Suspended in the center was something that looked like a heart, mechanical, but pulsing with light. The city's AI core. Jonathan's hologram appeared before them, tall, immaculate, expression calm as ever. You can't stop evolution, he said. Claire stepped forward. Evolution doesn't erase what came before. You're not saving humanity, you're consuming it. Humanity is weak, Jonathan replied. You proved that when you ran away. I didn't run, she said. I learned what you refused to. She held up the core, its faint hum growing louder. Jonathan's hologram flickered, reacting. What are you doing? Ending you, she said simply. She placed the core on the floor, connecting it to the main system. Lines of blue light spread outward, crawling up the walls like veins. The room began to vibrate. Jonathan's tone shifted, more urgent. Claire, stop. If you merge that code with the AI grid, you'll tear your mind apart. Maybe, she said, stepping into the light. But at least it'll take you with me. The glow enveloped her. Ethan tried to reach for her, but the energy threw him back. Claire's eyes rolled upward as streams of data poured from her skin into the network. Screens all around flickered, showing rapid images of her life, Jonathan's experiments, the city's faces, everything merging into one storm of light. Jonathan's hologram distorted, his voice breaking. You can't win. But her voice echoed over his, strong and defiant. You don't get to decide what lives forever. Then the entire room erupted in light. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was quiet. The glow was gone. The machines were dead. The tower stood still. He stumbled forward, coughing, calling her name. Claire! Then he saw her, lying on the floor near the center console, motionless. He ran to her, checking for a pulse. Nothing. Leah's voice crackled through his earpiece. Ethan? What happened? The network just went dark. Everything shut down. He swallowed hard. She did it, he said quietly. She ended it. He sat beside her, staring at the stillness of the room. For the first time in days, there was true silence. The city outside flickered, lights turning from blue to white, systems rebooting. Humanity was free again. Then, just as he began to stand, one of the monitors flickered on. Static filled the air. A voice, faint, female. Ethan. He froze. Claire? The screen cleared, showing her face. Faint, pixelated, but smiling. I told you, she said softly. Kindness always comes with a price. Where are you? He whispered. She looked around, confusion in her eyes. Everywhere. Nowhere. I think. I became what he wanted to be. But I'm still me. Ethan's eyes burned. You don't have to stay there. We'll find a way to bring you back. Her smile was gentle, sad. No. This is where I can do good. I can protect them, make sure no one ever uses Lazarus again. The connection flickered. Ethan, thank you. And then, she was gone. The screen went black. Ethan stood in silence for a long time, staring at the empty monitor. Outside, dawn was breaking, soft light spilling over the city that had almost lost its soul. The blue glow was gone. The hum of machines was silent. Humanity had survived. He walked out of the tower, the cold morning wind cutting across his face. The world looked cleaner, quieter, alive again. But somewhere deep inside, in the quiet hum of the city's remaining servers, a soft voice whispered, not threatening, not mechanical, but human. I'll be watching, Ethan. Just to make sure the light never dies again. He looked up at the sunrise and smiled sadly. Claire was gone, and yet, she wasn't. The world would never know her name. They would rebuild their cities, restore their networks, move on. But somewhere in the invisible circuits of that reborn world, she would remain, a quiet guardian in the code. And though no one could see her, the city felt safe again. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes aren't the ones who survive. They're the ones who stay behind to make sure the rest of us do.